What to do when the self-defense forces try to advance to the Korean Peninsula in the event of an emergency when Japanese residents living in South Korea are in danger. Japan consults with South Korea and permits entry if necessary. This is what South Korean Prime Minister WoKorea revealed in October 2015 in a question to the Diet. Prime Minister Hwang said, "I basically don't admit it, but the statement that if it is unavoidable, it will be possible with the consent of South Korea was a big debate at that time." Recently, Japan announced a policy to promote the possession of the ability to attack enemy bases in earnest in response to North Korea's missile launch, and teasered a major shift in Japan's defense policy. Such a trend has been promoted since the time of the former cabinet of Shinzo Abe, but it is accelerating with the recent changes in the international situation. At the Japan-US summit meeting, discussions were held on the possession of the ability to attack Japan's enemy bases, and the United States' intention to welcome Japan with the aim of strengthening its defense capabilities raised military tensions in North Korea. This is the result of the agreement between Japan, which is trying to virtually abandon the principle of exclusive defense-oriented policy, and the United States, which aims to restrain China through the alliance. It is in a complicated position for South Korea, which has had a bad relationship with Japan in the past. At the same time, Japan and South Korea have a military alliance with the United States. Although Japan and South Korea are not in alliance, they have promised cooperation among the three countries in dealing with North Korea through the United States. This is the reason why the stronger the provocation of North Korea, the stronger the US-Japan-Korea military cooperation. I don't want to imagine it, but what about an emergency on the Korean Peninsula? Based on these assumptions, Yoon Suk-jong, a research professor at the Japan Research Center of the Institute for Foreign Affairs and Security, analyzed what role Japan plays in the framework of the Japan-US alliance. According to this, at the time of the Cold War, Japan's role was limited to providing bases to the US forces in Japan, but during the Cold War, the self-defense forces began to support the rear areas and exercise collective self-defense rights, forming a regional alliance. It has been made such a Japan-US alliance was enacted by the passage of time, such as the emergence of China into a military power and the development of North Korea's nuclear weapons. Especially after the inauguration of the Second Abe cabinet in December 2012, this trend accelerated further, but in July 2014, after a cabinet decision, the geographical scope of rear area support was expanded to use force. He presented the new three requirements and clarified his position to exercise the right of collective self-defense. The Japan-US Defense Cooperation Guidelines were revised in April 2015, and the part regarding the Korean Peninsula emergency was prepared in September 2015 by the Significant Impact Situation Law and the Situation Response Law. Looking at the stage where each law is applied according to the situation, if the US military intervened in the conflict in a specific area, but the armed attack on the mainland of Japan has not yet occurred, is the Japanese government a serious impact situation? You have to judge if it is a situation. If this case is judged to be an important impact situation, the self-defense forces will provide support to the United States such as supply, transportation, repair maintenance, and medical care at places other than the site where combat activities are not currently deployed. The problem is that even if there is no armed attack on mainland Japan, the US military is attacked by hostile nations and the situation threatens Japan's security. If it is determined that the Japanese government is in a crisis of survival, Japan will exercise the right of collective self-defense. From this point, Japan, as an ally of the United States, will directly intervene in the situation on the Korean Peninsula. Of course, even in this case, it is a basic common sense that the permission of the South Korean government is required as to whether the SDF will advance to the Korean Peninsula. However, the greater the threat of North Korea, the greater the disagreement between Japan and South Korea on this part. Professor Yoon said, the self-defense forces have expanded the geographical scope of the Important Impact Situation Law and can exercise collective self-defense rights, increasing the possibility of entering South Korea's territory and waters in the event of an emergency on the Korean Peninsula. The possibility of the self-defense forces entering the territory of North Korea could be a dispute between Japan and South Korea, he said. These issues are discussed on the assumption of a wartime situation in the Korean Peninsula, but whether or not they can be dealt with properly depends on how Japan, the United States and South Korea communicate about the situation in North Korea and build trust.